My name is Bertha A. Witten, and I was 34 years old when I realized my family had decided my daughter didn't deserve a seat at their table. Last Christmas morning, Zoe woke up bouncing around the living room like the world was made of glitter and sugar. She's 9, old enough to pretend she doesn't believe in magic anymore, but young enough that her eyes still light up when something good happens. I'd been saving for months to get her the one thing she'd never asked for outright, a brand new iPhone. Not because she needed it, but because she'd earned it. Long nights of homework. A science project she poured herself into, a kid who tried hard even when no one was watching. I wrapped it in 3 layers of Frozen-themed paper, the kind she loved when she was younger. When she tore it open and saw the phone, she froze, then looked up at me like she needed confirmation that it was real. That look made every overtime shift worth it. I'd already set everything up the night before. Contacts, games, parental controls, even the wallpaper. Or so I thought. She pressed the power button, smiled, then frowned. "Mama," she said quietly. "Who's that?" I took the phone from her hands and felt my stomach drop. The lock screen wasn't what I'd set. It was a photo of my sister Claire, her husband Greg, their 2 kids, and Zoe, taken at a backyard barbecue years ago. I hadn't saved it. I didn't even remember having it on my phone. Zoe didn't understand. She just thought it was weird. I told her it must be a glitch and started checking the settings. Everything else looked clean. No messages, no photos, no contacts, just one calendar event scheduled for that day at 4 p.m., dinner at Claire's. The Apple ID logged into the phone wasn't mine. I checked the receipt again. The phone was new, sealed, purchased legitimately. The account had been accessed days earlier, but the only device tied to it was the one in my hand. At 12:10 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "Hey, Bertha. Quick change of plans. Just keeping it small this year. Claire's hosting for her in-laws. Let's do something next week, maybe. Love you." I read it 3 times. We were already dressed. The pie Zoe helped me bake the night before was cooling on the counter. She didn't ask questions. She just sat at the table, flipping through empty screens, waiting for me to explain something I didn't yet understand myself. I told her we'd figure something out. Maybe a movie. Maybe pancakes. I couldn't tell her the truth, not yet. At 4:03 p.m., I opened Find My iPhone. Family sharing was still active. The location pinged instantly. Claire's house. I didn't go right away. I waited 2 hours, cleaned up wrapping paper, poured a glass of wine I didn't drink. Then I packed up the pie, told Zoe to grab her jacket, and drove. Claire's car was in this driveway. So were my parents. The porch light was on. Through the front window, I could see Christmas lights and a child running past in a sparkly red dress. When Claire opened the door and saw me standing there with Zoe and the pie, she froze. I didn't say a word. I just held up the phone. That was when everything began to unravel. Claire didn't invite us in. She didn't smile or fake surprise. She just stood there, one hand on the doorframe, eyes flicking from my face to the phone in my hand, like she was calculating how much damage control she'd need. Before she could say anything, Greg appeared behind her, already tense, already irritated, like my presence was an inconvenience instead of a consequence. "What are you doing here?" he snapped, loud enough that I knew the kids inside could hear him. I still didn't raise my voice. I held the phone out a little higher so he couldn't pretend not to see it. My dad appeared next, stepping into the hallway with that familiar look he always wore when conflict showed up, the one that said he wanted it to go away without him having to choose a side. My mom stood behind him, arms crossed, lips pressed together, already shaking her head like I was embarrassing her by existing. No one denied it. That was the part that stayed with me. Not one of them tried to lie. Claire wouldn't look at me. Greg puffed himself up like this was some kind of power play. My parents acted like they were witnessing an argument between neighbors, not their own daughter being cut out of Christmas. I asked one question, not to Greg, not even to Claire. I looked straight at my dad. "Where did the phone come from?" He hesitated. I watched his eyes shift to Claire, then to my mom, then back to the floor. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I asked again, slower this time. Whose idea was it to give my daughter a used phone, log it into someone else's account, and invite her to a dinner she wasn't supposed to know about? Still nothing. Claire finally spoke, her voice flat, impatient. She said it was just a mix-up, that I was blowing things out of proportion, that maybe Zoe misunderstood what she saw. She actually said that, like a 9-year-old had orchestrated this entire thing herself. Greg stepped forwards then, pointing at me, telling me I was causing a scene in front of the kids, that it was Claire's house, Claire's rules, that I didn't get to just show up and ruin their Christmas. That was when I felt Zoe shift beside me. She was still holding the pie, gripping it so tightly her knuckles were white. She hadn't said a word since we arrived. She was just staring at Greg, eyes wide, trying to understand why a man who used to joke with her at barbecues was suddenly yelling at her mother. I knelt down and told her gently to go back to the car and wait. She nodded without asking why and walked away, carrying the pie like it was something fragile. As soon as the door shut behind her, I told them I was taking the phone to Apple the next day, that I'd report it, that I'd trace the Apple ID. That was when the panic finally surfaced. Greg exploded, shouting that I was being dramatic, that I was trying to start trouble, that I always thought I was better than everyone else. My dad grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back. My mom stayed silent, her face unreadable, like she'd already decided none of this was her responsibility. Claire looked at me then, really looked at me, and said, "You didn't have to come here." I turned around and left. Instead of going home, I drove Zoe to a 24-hour diner. She had pancakes and chocolate milk. She laughed when the whipped cream came out shaped like a snowman. I smiled back, but my mind wasn't there anymore. Something had shifted, something final. 3 days later, I found out why. My cousin Jenny called me, her voice nervous, like she wasn't sure if she should even say it. "Hey," she said, "did you know Claire flipped out after she saw Zoe in the newspaper?" That was when everything clicked. Zoe had won a regional science award 2 weeks earlier. It wasn't just a certificate and a handshake. Her school received a small grant because of it. There was a photo in the local paper, Zoe standing in front of her project, smiling like she'd discovered something important about herself. I hadn't told anyone in my family, not because I was hiding it, but because I'd learned a long time ago that sharing good news with them came with a price. Jenny told me she'd commented on the article on Facebook, tagging me and Zoe without thinking much of it. That was all it took. Claire saw it. And apparently that night at my parents' house, she lost it. She went on about how I was pushing Zoe too hard, how it wasn't healthy, how kids needed to just be kids, and then she said the part that made everything else fall into place. She didn't want her kids feeling less than on Christmas. She didn't think it was fair for Zoe to be the center of attention again. So Claire suggested keeping things low-key. Just her family, her in-laws. My parents agreed immediately. No pushback, no hesitation. Just like that, Zoe and I were erased from Christmas because my daughter's success made them uncomfortable. I sat with that for a full day. I didn't cry. I didn't rant. I just let it settle until it stopped surprising me. Then I opened my banking app. For the last 12 months, I'd been covering Claire's rent. $3,200 a month. Quietly. No strings. Ever since Greg got laid off and they needed help staying in their neighborhood so the kids wouldn't have to change schools, Claire said they'd only need a few months. It had been a year. I never told anyone, not my parents, not my cousins. I didn't want praise. I just wanted my niece and nephew stable. I canceled the auto payment. When the rent cycle hit and the payment didn't go through, Claire texted me saying there must be a bank glitch. I left her on red. A few hours later, she texted again, this time sharper. By evening, she'd called 4 times. I didn't answer any of them. The next morning, my mom messaged me. "Bertha, I know you're upset, but this is unnecessary. Can you please not make things harder for your sister?" No mention of Zoe, no apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done. That's when I understood this wasn't going to fix itself. They didn't think they'd done anything wrong. To them, I was just being emotional, overreacting, making things difficult. Claire didn't waste time. 3 days after the rent payment failed, she sent me a long email about how families go through rough patches, how she was hurt by the way I handled things, how she never meant for Zoe to feel excluded. She closed it with a line saying it wasn't Zoe's fault, which somehow made it worse, like my child was an accident in all of this. I didn't respond. The next day, Greg texted me. No greeting, no punctuation. "You need to fix this." I blocked his number. That week, the family group chat lit up for the first time since Christmas Eve. My mom posted a photo of Claire's kids building a gingerbread house. A few aunts reacted with heart emojis. Then my dad added, "So proud of these angels. Real team spirit." I left the group chat. Jenny called me not long after and said Claire was furious with her for telling me the truth. Then she dropped something else. My parents had planned a post-Christmas sleepover for all the grandkids, like they did every year. Claire told them she didn't want Zoe there, said she didn't want to deal with the tension. My mom agreed again. I didn't tell Zoe. I just told her plans changed. She didn't ask why, but she stopped talking about school as much. She went quiet when I asked about her drawings. One night I caught her flipping through that iPhone again, staring at the lock screen like she expected it to change. I took the phone and put it in a drawer. Claire, meanwhile, started spiraling. Without the rent money, things moved fast. Jenny heard from a friend in property management that a notice had already gone out. Claire posted vague Instagram stories about betrayal and fake generosity. What hurt wasn't the posts. It was how quickly my parents became her mouthpieces. My dad called, saying Claire was struggling and they were trying to keep the family together. I asked if he remembered who'd kept Claire afloat for the past year. He said they were all just trying to move past this. Then my mom tried. She told me Claire was embarrassed and didn't know how to apologize, told me this family needed me. I asked one question. Did you really agree to cut your only granddaughter out of Christmas? She paused, then said it wasn't like that. That was enough. From there, everything started to crack. I pulled out of the joint family vacation we'd planned for spring. I'd booked the rental cabin under my name months earlier, paid the deposit myself, handled the logistics the same way I always did. I canceled it quietly. No announcement, no explanation. Claire noticed within 20 minutes and texted me, "So you're really going to ruin it for everyone now? Grow up." I blocked her without replying. That's when the invitations stopped. First, it was Claire's son's birthday party. Then my cousin Melissa's daughter. The kind of quiet, gradual exclusion that's meant to punish without leaving fingerprints. No one said anything. No one asked why Zoe wasn't there. No one checked in except Jenny, who told me she felt like she was watching a slow-motion car crash and couldn't look away. She asked if I was going to forgive them. I told her no. This wasn't about forgiveness. It was about boundaries, about drawing a line and holding it, about making sure Zoe never grows up thinking that being good at something means being punished for it. And still, I wasn't done. I remembered something else. Last March, Claire asked me to co-sign a private school application for Lucy. She said it was just a formality, something about income brackets and boosting eligibility. I'd forgotten about it completely, but I'd never removed my name. That was the last thread. I called the school on a Tuesday morning and told them I needed to remove myself as co-signer on Lucy's enrollment documents. The woman on the phone sounded surprised. She asked if something had changed. I said yes. She told me I'd need to submit the request in writing. I did it within the hour. By Wednesday afternoon, the application was under review. Friday morning, Claire called me from a number I didn't recognize. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "What the hell did you do?" I hung up. 2 hours later, Greg texted from another number. "You really think this fixes anything? You think you're better than everyone." I blocked him too. That evening, I took Zoe to our favorite faux place. We went home and made popcorn. She wanted to rewatch that claymation Christmas movie with the abominable snowman. It was the first time in weeks I saw her truly relax. She curled up next to me and fell asleep before the credits rolled. The next morning, I opened my front door to grab the newspaper, and there was an envelope on the doormat. No stamp, no return address, no handwriting. Inside was the same photo from Zoe's iPhone. Claire, Greg, their kids. Zoe, taken at a family barbecue years ago. But this time, someone had drawn a thick black X over Zoe's face. On the back, written in pen, were the words, "Enjoy your win. Hope your daughter learns what losing feels like soon." I stood there for a full minute, heart pounding. I checked the hallway cameras. Nothing. No one had come to the door overnight. The building's front entrance locks automatically after 10 p.m. It was subtle, careful. It was a threat. I put the photo in a drawer. The same drawer where I'd shoved the iPhone. I didn't tell Zoe. I didn't even tell Jenny. But something in me hardened after that. The anger faded. What replaced it was focus. On Monday, Jenny called, whispering like she was sharing classified information. Claire and Greg had pulled Lucy out of her private school. They couldn't afford tuition without financial aid. Claire tried to bluff her way into a payment plan. It backfired. Lucy would be finishing the year somewhere else. No backup plan, just chaos. Later that afternoon, I got a direct message on Instagram. It was from Lucy. "Why is my mom blaming you for everything? What happened?" She's 12, caught in the middle of something she didn't create. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't respond. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't put a child in the middle of an adult war. The silence in the family got louder that week. My parents started posting old family photos on Facebook. Captions like, "Some people come and go, but family is forever." Jenny sent me screenshots with dry commentary. Then, just when I thought it couldn't get clearer, my dad showed up at my door. He looked smaller, not angry, just tired. He said he wanted to clear the air. I let him talk. He told me Claire and Greg were probably moving in with them. Said things had gotten out of hand. Then he slipped. He told me it wasn't all Claire's idea to keep Zoe out of Christmas, that my mom had suggested it, said it might be better this way to avoid competitive tension. That was the moment everything snapped into place. I asked him if Zoe was even mentioned in any of their holiday plans. He didn't answer, just stared at the floor. I closed the door after he left and sat down. It wasn't grief, it was clarity. And then, 3 days later, I got a letter from a credit monitoring agency. Someone had tried to open a credit card in my name. The credit alert sat on my kitchen table like a dare. Someone had tried to open a credit card using my full legal name, address, date of birth, everything. The application had been flagged and declined, but the message was clear. This wasn't an accident. This was someone reaching for control after realizing they'd lost it everywhere else. I wasn't even shocked. That was the part that scared me the most. I called the credit agency, reported the attempt, froze my credit, and changed every password I could remember. Then I went through my old files, the ones I hadn't touched in months. School forms, financial aid paperwork, copies of tax returns. And there it was, a scanned document from the private school application I'd co-signed for Lucy the year before. My information, my signature, everything anyone would need. Only 2 people ever had access to it, Claire and my mother. I thought about filing a police report. I had enough to start an investigation, but once I crossed that line, there would be no going back. Not for them, not for me, so I waited. 2 days later, I got an email from a man named Vic, the landlord of Claire's building. He said he was reaching out because Claire listed me as an emergency contact. Rent was over 30 days late. Formal eviction proceedings had begun. He wanted to know if I'd be stepping in like I had before. I stared at the screen, then typed one sentence. "Do not contact me again. Remove my information immediately. I am not responsible for her." No signature, no pleasantries. That was the moment it truly hit Claire that I wasn't coming back. That night, my mom called. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "We need to talk. I had no idea things had gotten this far. Please don't destroy your sister." Destroy, as if I'd been swinging an axe instead of closing a door. A few hours later, Claire posted on Facebook a long public post about family betrayal, false generosity, and people who pretend to help just to punish you later. No names, but it didn't need them. Comments poured in. Vague sympathy, confused questions. A few shared posts from Greg about watching people show their true colors. I stayed silent. Zoe noticed the tension anyway. She asked why we didn't go to Grandma's house anymore. I told her the truth, just enough of it. I said some people weren't being kind and that it wasn't a place we needed to be right now. She nodded and went back to her drawings. A week later, Jenny confirmed Claire and Greg had moved in with my parents. Said she ran into them at the grocery store. Greg was arguing with someone in the parking lot. Claire pretended not to recognize her. Then the calls started again. My mom, my dad, messages about sitting down like adults, about not letting money ruin relationships. That one made me laugh. The final straw came from Zoe's school. The guidance counselor called to say there'd been a situation with another student, Lucy. She'd been telling kids that Zoe bragged too much, that she was mean. There'd been a lunchroom argument. Zoe ended up sitting alone. It wasn't severe yet, but it was enough. I sat Zoe down that night and explained calmly what was happening without blaming anyone. She listened, then said one thing that told me I was doing the right thing. I don't want to be like them. That night, I opened a blank document and wrote everything down. Every rent payment, every bank transfer, the phone, the photo, the credit card attempt, the school withdrawal. I wasn't planning to publish it. I just needed the truth in one place. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Not to press charges, not yet, just to start the process of legally removing Claire from anything tied to my name and making sure Zoe was protected. Airtight. Then I blocked every remaining number. I wasn't done out of spite. I was done because the fire had already taken enough. The next time I heard about Claire, it wasn't from her or my parents. It was from Jenny, who sent me a screenshot with no commentary. A GoFundMe page. The title read, "Help Us Rebuild a Family Torn Apart." Claire had posted it with a carefully staged photo of her kids sitting on my parents' porch, eyes down, faces solemn. The caption talked about betrayal, about being forced out of their home, about someone they trusted turning their back on them when they needed help most. She never used my name. She didn't have to. The implication did the work for her. I scrolled through the comments slowly. Strangers offering prayers. $10, $20, $50. A few cousins chiming in with hearts. Greg's sister, the one who once cried on the phone asking me for a job referral, posted about standing strong. Claire had taken the only thing she had left and turned it into a weapon, the story. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't post screenshots or write a rebuttal. I did something quieter. I flagged the fundraiser through the platform's reporting system and attached documentation, proof that the eviction wasn't the result of some sudden tragedy, just unpaid rent, proof that I'd been listed as an emergency contact without consent, proof that the narrative was false. 2 days later, the fundraiser vanished. Jenny texted me to confirm Claire had lost access to whatever little money had come in. Not much. A few $100s. Enough to sting. Enough to let her know I was still paying attention. The fallout came fast. Greg called Jenny drunk one night, slurring about how I'd ruined his family, how Zoe was going to end up just like me, angry and alone. Jenny hung up on him. She didn't call me afterward. She didn't need to. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, purple ink on lined notebook paper. It was from Lucy. She wrote that she didn't understand why everything had turned out this way, that she missed Zoe, that her mom told her to stay away, but she didn't want to. She asked one simple question at the end, can I still be her cousin? I cried reading it, not because it softened my resolve, but because it reminded me how far damage spreads when adults turn love into competition. I didn't respond. Not because Lucy didn't deserve kindness, but because pulling a child into this mess wouldn't protect either of them. On a quiet Sunday morning, I packed everything into a box. The iPhone, the photo with the black X, the credit alert, the school letters, the documentation. I sealed it and put it into storage, not as evidence, as closure. Then I changed my number, closed the old family email, blocked every account that ever tried to drag Zoe into their chaos. I stopped sending birthday gifts, declined every invitation that filtered through mutual friends. I didn't attend funerals or retirements or milestone dinners. Eventually, they stopped trying. If you're wondering whether I ever felt guilt, the answer is no. Because when a family decides a child's success is something to compete with, when they decide exclusion is an acceptable tool, when they go so far as to weaponize generosity and silence, the right response isn't confrontation. It's absence. I didn't burn anything down. I walked away while they were still holding the matches. And that's how I protected my daughter.